The world was integrated 100 years ago. And so you can look from outside, you can't tell a pure Negro. And now the white man is mad. He's angry because he hates to look at it. Well, his old grandparents done all this, and some of them mixed with Choctaws, some of them mixed with white, some of them mixed with Cherokees, some black ones, some white ones, some pink ones, and some red ones. And it's just a regular bouquet.
When I look at her, when I see a child like that, it amazes me. I cannot conceive of how anyone could call that child a nigger. I don't see how anyone could differentiate between a white child or any other child and say that that kid wasn't beautiful. And to watch them playing games, I can only conceive of jealousy.
A decision was made in November of 1963 to bring to Mississippi a large number of volunteers. The number agreed on was 950. There were 4,000 applicants. In June of '64, the first of 2 one-week orientations began. They were held at the Western College for Women in Oxford, Ohio. The people came from all parts of the country, including whites from the South and students from abroad.
Reverend Edward King is a leader in the civil rights movement in Mississippi. Many attempts have been made on his life, the last one almost fatal. He was born, raised, and lives in Mississippi. There are other whites in Mississippi who feel as he. True, not enough, but a beginning.
Here they learned of the plans for the Mississippi Freedom Project. The movement would surpass any previous program, both in its intensity and scope. It would be an all-out frontal attack on the backwardness of education in Mississippi, along with intensifying the voter registration campaign. In addition to these programs, there would be the very important goal of having the federal government sit up and take notice. They learned how to organize and conduct freedom schools and community centers. They learned about Mississippi law and of the treatment to be expected from the whites. Nonviolence is the essence of the organizations connected with the Mississippi Summer Project. Here, the volunteers learned more about nonviolence and how to conduct themselves accordingly. The young people were shown the methods of nonviolent resistance and how to roll up and try to protect themselves from beatings. Here in Ohio, situations of brutality were acted out. It was done in complete seriousness, but something was missing. Here in Mississippi, there was no acting, but they found out what had been missing. It was fear. Young people learned that in each area in Mississippi, there would be an experienced project director who would pave the way for the summer project. For the past few years, this handful of civil rights workers, who were now project directors, had waged the freedom struggle alone. Now they had help, better than 700 volunteers. Together, they held one of the keys to the whole movement in the South. The future hinged on the effectiveness of the Mississippi Summer Project. We've got a larger than usual police force, Mayor Allen Thompson of Jackson explained. It's twice as big as any city our size. We're going to be ready for them, he went on. They won't have a chance. Only a few days after arriving in Mississippi, 3 young men from this group were murdered. Their mutilated and bullet-pierced bodies found weeks later under 20 feet of earth at the bottom of a dam. We've got a larger than usual police force, Mayor Allen Thompson of Jackson explained. It's twice as big as any city our size. We're going to be ready for them, he went on. They won't have a chance. The programs that operate out of the community centers are for the purposes of meeting some of the basic needs of both the elder Negroes and youngsters. Here, the adults are given instructions in literacy, and the children are offered the opportunity of a recreational outlet, a pleasure not otherwise afforded them growing up in Mississippi.
Community Center is located in an old church. The church has about half the window panes out and holes in the roof. Behind the church, there's another old building that's in much better shape, and the project has put in new windows and built shelves all around and made it into a library. This building was previously a schoolroom that housed about 50 students. We got a large field out to the side, and we set up a swing and a basketball court. The field's big enough to play softball in, practically, and there are a lot of trees surrounding it. It's pretty, kind of a pretty spot. We set this one up to take in any child that doesn't have a chance to go to the Freedom School. Maybe has to work the field most of the day and comes in one day a week, and doesn't have the opportunity for regular classes, can come here and play basketball if he's older, or can swing. Typing lessons have kids in them anywhere from 10 years old on up, people with families, you know.
She's a very amazing kind of person. The first time we talked, she said, almost with tears in her eyes, "I couldn't believe that people with your colored skin would ever be the way you've been." She just didn't understand. It was totally against her concept of the world and of the white man.
I was kidding with one of the guys. I don't know how we got onto it, but he's saying how he matured or something, and he didn't disobey his parents or anything anymore. He didn't talk back and things like that. And I said, "Well, you talk back to me, don't you?" And he said, "Yeah, but you're my friend." Yeah. I teach school in New York, in a private school, and those kids there come from upper class families. Many of them have been brainwashed with the idea of the importance of learning to read and so forth. Many of them are very excited about it, but no more so than these kids here. I have some adults that come in for literacy. I thought I'd come across more resistance in introducing adult literacy. It wasn't particularly difficult. It didn't seem to get some adults to come here.
I've been out of school about 20-something years myself, 21 years. And I'm even learning something. I didn't even know much about reading and writing before I left for Freedom School. After I started attending Freedom School, I got where I can read and write a little. And doing extra well.
Then you find out some of the childhoods they did have. Luella is 8 now, and she was telling me about how she picked cotton 2 years ago.
If he's a pretty good cotton picker, if you give him $2 per hundred, you probably can make about $4 a day. And that's not very much, especially if you have a family to feed. This all you class, so you can't say nothing about it. If you do, then you're gonna be strung up or something like that. First year we made 15 bales of cotton, and he gave us only $100. Second year we was there, we made 19 bales of cotton, and we only cleared $50. The third year we was there, we made 9 bales of cotton, and he said we come out $9 in the hole.
That was your pay for picking?
Just for pay for plying, hoeing, and picking. And a bale of cotton will bring you really $200 a bale. I know that they would clean up their house, they would have a nicer house than any white man if they had the money. But they just really don't have the money. It takes all the little money that they have to try to feed the family, try to clothe them. Well, my house is in pretty bad shape. It's walled up with newspaper, and it's not sealed inside, just one single wall, no ceiling inside. And so it's just covered with paper.
My door is dragging like my heart more each day. My door's dragging like my heart more each day. floor is just about forgotten.
The planks is weak and almost rotten.
Well, the planks is weak and rotten. My floor is just about forgotten. My house is tired, tired just like my soul. Said my house is tired, people just like my soul. Trouble's just like the cold wind swarm.
Takes a whole lot of heat, and still you can't stay warm. Oh, I feel very bad about this. When I see this lady and her kids all standing around, and they were dressed very poorly, her clothes had holes in them, the kids were standing around crying. And what I mean, it hurt me inside. It really hurt me, and what I mean, I thought about it.
If somebody didn't go there to find out about them, where would they go?
I don't know. That's a problem that we have to work on.
I want my things get on sale, 'cause I want my freedom, I want my freedom. Don't bow down, 'cause I want my freedom, I want my freedom, I want my freedom. Don't bow down, 'cause I want my freedom, I want my freedom. Feeling over will arrest me 'cause I want my freedom, I want my freedom, I want my freedom. Feeling over will arrest me 'cause I want my freedom, I want my freedom. Feeling over will arrest me 'cause I want my freedom.
At one point, there were elaborate plans for freedom schools. Then, realizing there wasn't any money, what freedom schools would have to be were simply volunteer teachers together with willing students, congregating in some donated facility, such as a church, a plot of land, under the welcome shade of a tree.
And that's what freedom schools have been in Mississippi this summer, and I think that's why they have been successful, because they have been different from regular school. They have been informal. People have been able to make a real human contact with each other.
The difference between Oxford, Ohio, and what happened here and in other freedom schools across the state is as different as reading about a philosophy and living it. We simply discussed what was going to happen there, but we didn't know whether we'd be well received. We didn't know whether the kids would be enthusiastic. We didn't know whether we'd be shot when we came into town, and we didn't know whether the kids would come to school with 90% regularity or 10%.
We have won some students that we walk 8 miles to that school. When the people come down, they come in pickup trucks, and the pickup trucks are just as load as they can get, and they have to leave behind the ones that couldn't fit in.
The concept of a freedom school is to supplement the system of public education in 2 ways. First, by remedial academic instruction, and second, by the discussion of controversial social issues which are close to the experience of the students and which the public school teachers of Mississippi are afraid to bring up in their classrooms.
In regular Negro schools, there is no mention of Negro history or civil or constitutional rights, and little or no liberal arts. And although Negro schools, they are still controlled by the whites. The Negro teachers, in most cases, are unqualified and
don't come prepared for any kind of class. They come and teach any group of students that they can find.
Before this summer, the kids never knew that such a thing as discussion. I don't think they knew that discussion existed.
We have attempted to do an educational job in the narrow sense, and we feel we've made a beginning on it and that we can do it better this winter, but that there's a far larger purpose for a freedom school, which is the awakening of the capacity for self-government among young people, the stimulation of the sense that life can be changed.
Important thing seems to be to get a contact between people, a communication. The greatest thing I think Freedom Schools or any of us can hope to do down here this summer is to plant that little seed.
This magazine is called the Pleasant Green Magazine. And as we discussed things, we decided we wanted 5 things in the magazine: news, stories and riddles, poetry, editorial section, and history. The magazine, as printed, has every mistake that was made by the pupils, so there are many mistakes in it, but it's a very honest representation of what the children can do. I think my favorite page in the magazine is the page of riddles, because these original riddles are excellent. First one, for example: I'm tall and fat, have green hair and sometime brown, have one great big rust leg and have more than 100 arms. Lost my suitcase when I was young, and when I grow up, I got a trunk. What am I? A tree.
If you want your freedom, clap your hands. If you want your freedom, clap your hands. If you want your freedom, if you want your freedom, if you want your freedom, clap your hands. If you want your freedom, stomp your feet. If you want your freedom, stomp your feet. If you want your freedom, if you want your freedom, if you want your freedom, stomp your feet. If you want your freedom, stomp your feet. Yeah! If you want your freedom, stomp your feet. Yeah! If you want your freedom, if you want your freedom, if you want your freedom, stomp your feet. Yeah! Stomp your hands. Stomp your feet. Stomp your hands.
What have you been doing with the movement? How did you get into it?
Well, when the movement first came in to Mississippi, when it first came into Madison County, and so I started by volunteering, working with the movement. And from there on that, I contact some of the leaders, going to mass meeting with them, talking at the mass meeting, and helping the whole mass meeting. Then I started the canvassing on feet. Even before the volunteers came in, I was canvassing on feet. I would go tell a whole lot of people about the mass meeting, what a mass meeting is going to be here, what time, and try to get people to go out.
A mass meeting or mass voter registration. We would get out there, tell them you have the right to vote, goddamn, go down there and vote. Go down there and register. This guy can't do anything to you. You're exercising a constitutional right. You are right. You are in the right.
I'm very proud to be here tonight to see all of the people of Indianola here in a freedom meeting. Thousands of Negroes have been murdered for attending meetings such as this. Negroes have been murdered for the fact that they were black. And when people tried to register to vote, they were told that they had to leave plantations. Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer is a living example of that.
My name is Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer. It was 18 of us traveled 26 miles by bus to the county courthouse in Indianola, Mississippi to try to register and vote. Policemen there with khaki clothes on and just plain people there with guns. And they watched us that day as though we was criminals. When I got back here to Roosevelt, my kids met me. And my girl said, Mama, I believe you'll have to leave here. And then Mr. Marlowe came and said, you will have to go back down to the courthouse and withdraw your registration or you will have to leave. I didn't go down to the courthouse and withdraw because I left that same night.
If that wasn't enough, 16 bullets were fired into the house where she was staying. Mrs. Victoria Gray. Her husband was fired from his job when he tried to register people to vote.
Senator Easton stands in the Senate regularly and says that you're satisfied that in this county more than 68% of the population are Negroes, and that yet there are less than 1% of those people who can vote. That you're satisfied with having a police force who will beat up Negroes to keep you from registering to vote. And if you continue to attend these meetings, you're saying that you will no longer be satisfied with having Negroes beat, with Negroes having to work 10 and 12 hours a day for $3.
The voter registration phase of the Mississippi Project consisted of a house-to-house canvass to try to encourage people to go to the courthouse and register to vote. When possible, the volunteer canvassed with a local Negro for the purpose of gaining the confidence of the Negro community. When trying to encourage the people to register, the biggest problem you deal with is fear, and no wonder. In connection with the people who were directly or indirectly involved with the summer project, there were, in the space of 8 weeks, 371 arrests, 55 beatings, 37 burnings or bombings of either homes or churches, 20 attempted shootings, 1 person missing, and 3 murders. Registration in Mississippi consists of filling out a long and extremely complicated form, in every way designed to eliminate the Negro.
Like by whom are you employed? Well, see, when you put by whom are you employed, you fired by the time you get back home.
Other methods are evicting them from plantations, beatings, and even killings. After some 18 questions, the registrar asks you to copy a section of the Mississippi Constitution. There are about 285 sections in the Mississippi Constitution.
And after you write it, copy it out of the book, he'll tell you to give, the registrar will tell you to give a reasonable interpretation.
It is up to the discretion of the registrar whether your interpretation is adequate, and there is no recourse to his decision. If you are a Negro, in all but a very few token cases, the registrar finds you unqualified to vote. However, if you are white, your answer could be illiterate and still be acceptable. A Negro going to the courthouse to register will perhaps be met with verbal harassment from the police or White Citizens Council, private citizens lining the streets with guns, police with trained dogs, and clubs. Or perhaps he's beaten or arrested by the police for carrying a sign or for trespassing on public property. If allowed in the courthouse, he may stand in line for 9 hours, while only 4 Negroes are registered.
We have met this type of harassment day in and day out, just because we want to register and vote.
Or perhaps the day will go by without event. Without event, perhaps, but not without fear.
This woman attended a voter registration workshop. On the way home, she sat at the front of the bus. For these crimes, she was arrested.
The state highway patrolman said, "You bitch, we gonna make you wish you was dead." And he said, "Come on out, fatso." And I was led out of that cell into another cell where they had 2 Negro prisoners The state highway patrolman gave the first Negro the blackjack and ordered me to lay with my face down on a bunk bed. And he told the first Negro to beat. The Negro said, "Do you want me to beat her with this?" He said, "You damn right." Say, "If you don't, say, you know what we will do for you." And the first Negro began to beat. And he beat until he was exhausted. Then the state highway patrolman ordered the second Negro to take the blackjack. When the second Negro began to beat, it was almost more than I could bear. One of the white men began to beat me in my head, and one of the policemen got up and walked over and pulled my dress as high as he could, where it wasn't anything but my panties for them to beat on. And they beat, and they beat, till I must have passed out, and I was carried back to my cell. They had our trial, that was on Sunday. They had our trial on Tuesday. The same white people that had had us beaten was on the jury seat. We was charged with disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. The little mayor asked me, how did I plead? And I said, that's not true. I said, I didn't resist arrest, and I wasn't doing anything disorderly. I said, you beat me almost to death. I said, so if you shoot me down, I'm not going to say I'm guilty when I hadn't done anything. And we was carried back to jail, and our fines was $200.
So as a volunteer, you go from house to house, encouraging people to try to register to vote. For so doing, they may be unable any longer to feed and clothe their children, and may literally have to put their lives on the line. A few months prior to the Democratic National Convention, emphasis was switched from voter registration to registering people in the newly formed Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. United States Senators Eastland and Stennis from Mississippi continually state in the Senate that the Negro doesn't want to vote. By the time the party National Democratic Convention met, there were more than 65,000 Freedom registered people. The Negro obviously wants to vote. He just wants the chance. These 65,000 people were represented at the National Democratic Convention by 68 delegates. They were elected in a duly constituted manner, with precinct and county meetings, district meetings, and a state convention. The Freedom delegation brought to the Credentials Committee of the National Democratic Party the challenge that they, and not the regular all-white Democratic Party, really spoke for the people of Mississippi. The regular Mississippi delegation based its claim to be seated with the argument that they represented the legal party of Mississippi. And since the Freedom Democratic Party was not sanctioned by the National Democratic Committee, they had no legal right to be seated. The Freedom Democratic Party would try to show why the regular Democratic Party should not be the legal party of Mississippi, and that the regular Democratic Party did not represent the basic ideals of the National Democratic Party. The Freedom Democratic Party, although predominantly Negro, is open to all, black and white. On the other hand, 42% of the population in Mississippi is Negro, and not one is represented in the regular Mississippi Democratic Party. It is the job of the sheriffs, circuit clerks, and White Citizens Council to keep it that way.
But we can no longer now ignore this fact and can say that America is the land of the free and the home of the brave when people are being murdered because we want the right of the ballot.
What do you think the Mississippi Summer Project has meant, what has been accomplished by it.
One of the first things, it's the first time in our lives that we have been treated really nice.
It's in terms of communication. And I'm not so sure that what we are offering, teaching the Negroes down here, is as valuable as what we're learning from the Negro community down here. The way of life of these people is something beautiful, and there's a profound kind of, call it love, a profound sense of life that exists here. It doesn't exist in such abundance anywhere within the bourgeois society. Living with these people, becoming a part of the community here, is an experience for all of us, I think. For me, anyway, I've never been a part of any community as much as I've been a part of this community down here.
Come back what for last night now.
Mr. Sims, who's an old Negro man, he's blind. He's been blind all his life. Doesn't know what the sun is or anything like that. He plays the guitar. The guitar is his life. His guitar is his woman, named Della Mae. And he has a cane, and that's his horse. And he pours his whole soul into that guitar, and this is his primary means of expression. But anyway, he's been sick, and he has had to go to the hospital. One time, I had the opportunity of going to the University Hospital in Jackson with him. We spent about 5 hours in the morning together in the hospital. Later on, Mr. Sims and I drove back to Canton and went into barbershop, Negro barbershop in Canton, and Mr. Sims was relating some of our experiences at the University Hospital to the barber. He said, yeah, it was very hard. And he said, but my brother stayed right with me all the time. He said, the whole time I was there, my brother stayed right with me. The barber said, well, who's your brother? I didn't know you had a brother. And Mr. Sims motioned over in my direction and said, that's him. That's my brother sitting right over there. I don't know whether this explains it. I think probably more than anything, what we're giving these people is the opportunity to call a white man brother. I think this is the essence of what will be gained, what has been gained from coming down to Mississippi and working with the people.
It was over a score of years ago. Anna Frank, a 15-year-old Jewish girl, along with her family, faced Nazi extermination. Before her death, she wrote, "I still believe, in spite of everything, that people are really good at heart." The swamps are laden with countless Negroes dating from this moment back. All those scenes of the late 20s, the tempo has not changed. Proof, 3 civil rights workers this summer, plus 9 mutilated Negro bodies were found in the course of the search for the 3 boys. The murderers in Mississippi go unpunished as sure as they have in the past. Above all, the murderers are guilty of ignorance, a crime not of a few, but the guilt of a nation. And if a few are punished, this in no way erases the guilt that is ours as a nation. The second war for American independence has begun. It is a war against ignorance. And we who remain silent, passive, are condoning murder as surely as if we light the match, pull the rope, or fire the gun. People are really good at heart. And so the people of Mississippi. Black, white, all.
And it came to pass from the dedication of a few and the success of an idea, the Mississippi Summer Project. From this has grown the Mississippi Freedom Movement, a continuation of the program through the winter. In scope, it will be more imaginative. In intensity, more dynamic. There will be more programs, and they will grow and grow until finally, we shall overcome.